State Department. Here's some. Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another edition of Flashpoint, a television program of issues and ideas. Flashpoint is brought to you by the Lawrence Debate Union, an endowed co-curricular activity at the University of Vermont that trains UVM students in the arts and skills of debating and then has them debate in all kinds of different formats and contexts all around the region, around the nation, around the world, and now on your television or your TV screen. One of the other things we do to promote discussion, discourse, and debate in our community is to bring you Flashpoint. And are we determined? We've got 360 such programs in our past. And you can watch them on the internet if you want to. Go to our website, debate.uvm.edu. Click on the Flashpoint icon, and a vast panoply of Flashpoint programs will be available to you. My name's Alfred C. Snider. I'm the Edwin W. Lawrence Professor of Forensics, and I'll be your facilitator for this pushy and verbose program. I'd like to welcome our panelists for this edition of Flashpoint, and we're very proud to have 3 fourth-year students on our panel today. Starting on the far left, I have Taylor Lalemand, who's a debater, social activist, and tightly scheduled individual.
Yes, I am. Double major keeps you very busy.
And recently you were at a Carbonators event?
Yes, there's a lot of social movement on campus right now to go carbon neutral or work on our climate action plan, and I've been lucky enough to be involved in that.
Okay, great, congratulations.
Thanks.
On my immediate left, I have Stephanie Kimerer, the squad captain. It's been a while since you've been on Flashpoint.
Yeah, I think it's been almost a year, actually.
Well, but,
once the season winds down.
Just dragging you back. So, what's up? Graduate school?
Haven't heard from graduate schools yet, but
Still waiting,
hoping
right?
to go to grad school this
Right, if
fall.
somebody's out there with a graduate
Yeah, if
assistantship,
you're,
they
yeah,
get
please.
Get with you right now. Well, thanks for all of your contribution through your 4 years, and especially the way in which you helped other people, because that's really important. Everybody can be selfish. In fact, most people are. But to give back really means something.
Thanks.
On my far right, I have another fourth-year student, Joseph Torda, who just went to his last debate tournament.
That's right.
How was it?
It was fantastic. And Portland, Oregon, very cool city. I was very, very thankful for the opportunity.
I heard my sister Pam took you out and took care of you.
Yeah, she was a wonderful woman, took us out to dinner, showed us around the city a little bit. It was great.
Yeah, those alumni, you can depend on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on my right, I have the dean, that's Sam Ricker, who's probably been on Flashpoint than anybody else except for me. You'll never catch me, by the way. Well, perhaps after I pass away. But what was your experience in Portland like?
Portland was entirely new experiences. It was my first time on an airplane, my farthest distance away from home. But in addition to that, you know, it was a really great city to be in, and the tournament had some tough competition, and overall I was, you know, very satisfied at the end of that trip.
Okay. And what did you think of that air flight thing?
Well, I was bored once we got up in the air, but takeoff and landing is still fun. And airports are everything they're cracked up to be, which is not much.
In terms of convenience, no. Well, here we are for show number 361, 21st Century Bullying. Well, bullying's been going on probably as long as there are people, but it's sort of different now. When I was a kid, maybe someone would identify some kid who was weird in some way, or different, or had a strange habit, or we didn't know much about, or a new kid or something, and everybody would make fun of him and sort of harass him, and then it became sort of a game. It was one of those cruel games of childhood. Now the cruel games of childhood have accelerated until they can be quite overpowering in their impact that they can have on young people, and we're going to talk about some of that this week on Flashpoint. Let's start with Stephanie. I think, Stephanie, you had an example of,
Yeah,
of
well,
a situation.
Yeah, I think recently a lot of people have seen in the news there was a case in Florida where a group of girls was harassing another girl, common teen angst and whatnot, gossip, but it went a little too far when they actually assaulted her and beat her and had two boys their age standing outside guarding the house where they were doing this, and then attempted to post the video on YouTube, which is problematic, and that's one instance of this cyberbullying. And it's problematic too because YouTube is a user-run site, and so really things don't get reported unless the users report it, and things like that. It's easy for them to get kind of swept under the rug, but it's really affecting a lot of young people in our country right now.
And Sam, you have an example of sort of low level.
Sort of low level. Not no one got hurt physically, but emotionally certainly. This incident was a bunch of 8th grade girls. One of them had some makeup stolen from her, and she reported the girls that committed the incident, which you would think, that would be the end of it. But as she went home, the people who got caught for this incident were harassing her, instant messaging and email, calling her a bunch of names and threatening her. She went to a basketball game later that evening and received 50 text messages of the same kind of vulgarity and threats. So we see in the information age, an issue doesn't stop the classroom. It can, become part of your entire life.
Taylor, I think you had another example.
Right. Unfortunately, a 15-year-old boy in Cape Coral, Florida, was taunted on the internet for over a year. Taunts were posted, and he ended up committing suicide, which is a higher level of harassment that's really linking this new internet bullying to a larger scale of problems, because as we said before, it's bringing problems in school into the home.
Here's one in 2006, 13-year-old killed herself after being insulted online by a schoolmate's mother, pretending to be a 16-year-old boy. The woman created the bogus personality to learn what the girl thought of her own daughter. It was kind
Out
of
of
a weird,
control.
weird experiment gone wrong. So, like we say, bullying happens, but now there are so many new ways to do it. So let's start out by talking about them. Now, everybody is upset that they get spam email, right? And and they say the same 5 things, a lot of money from Nigeria
Right.
or whatever. This could be bigger,
Uh-huh.
and so and that's kind of vexing. But if you received all kinds of emails over and over again that were all personally attacking you from imaginary people or invented addresses, that would be pretty disturbing. We can all, but that's just the beginning, right? We can all identify with being upset with email. What are some of the other ways?
Well, increasingly, text messaging has become a weapon for people to bully one another, and it's something that everybody has access to. A number of children these days have cell phones, and while there are rules against using them in school, oftentimes the rules say that they need to be turned off and kept in your backpack, but that doesn't mean that you can't use it. So, people are just in class, you'll excuse yourself, go to the bathroom, and then you can text anybody, and word spreads very quickly. This allows the rumor mill to sort of function on a hyper scale,
In fact, one of our alums, Leslie Keller, was preparing a presentation in the office just before we came, and she was saying, some kid goes to the bathroom, text messages a bunch of people, and soon there's a buzz in the classroom that you can feel, but since you're not being sent the text message, it's not. What else?
Instant messaging has become a big one too. So many kids these days are online on AIM, Instant Messenger, all those, Yahoo, MSN. It seems like everyone has one now, and that's become a big problem because people don't have the, people say things that they wouldn't say face-to-face over Instant Messenger, and also it's so easy to get different screen names. So you can be completely anonymous with one screen name, and then if they block you, you can just make another one quite easily, and so that's really a big area too.
Another key venue would be social networking sites like MySpace or Facebook, because it's become, I have a Facebook account. Many of my friends have Facebook accounts, and with the younger generation, it's even more prevalent. So it's another point of contact where people can potentially bully one another.
Yeah, here's one in Chelsea, Maine. A 13-year-old girl claimed that bullying began on school grounds. Then it moved online when a classmate allegedly hijacked her profile page on myspace.com to harass her. A webpage filled with demeaning statements written as if the 13-year-old girl were describing herself was posted until family members intervened with MySpace administrators who removed it. And you imagine how painful that could be, that you think that anyone would see it if you say things like, well, I'm kind of dumb and I'm not very smart and
I'm sure it's a lot worse
gee,
than that.
gee, yeah, I mean,
It's terrible.
gee, I'm so unhappy my mother's a whore, and
Right.
you know, it's
Sure,
like
sure.
you know, that kind of stuff, and you're of a 13-year-old. But there's and some of our viewers, I don't think, understand what the social networking page can be, because it's email, it's instant message, it's diary,
It's everything.
it's
Yeah.
photo sharing.
I mean, it
it's
becomes your
video
internet
sharing,
identity
it's
in many ways.
It creates a whole new social realm where you had to be at one point popular and have friends on the playground, in the cafeteria, wherever. Now it's a whole separate area where you are held up to these standards and have to present yourself in certain ways.
Sure.
So when the bullying goes to that level, it just creates more stress for
Right.
the kids.
And it's, you know, how many friends you have, how many pictures you have posted of yourself. All of these become a status symbol.
Parents technically don't understand why the visual imagery is being used as such a weapon, because one mom on the Today Show actually said that she was confused why someone would post another person getting beat up on the internet, just for fear of getting caught, first of all, and second of all, because what entertainment value can be found in such an act. But I think parents need to recognize that people are growing up faster and faster, and these can be very detrimental, as seen by the violent acts taken upon these kids.
I think it's also important to recognize the anonymity factor that you touched on, Steph. It's the online atmosphere, it's really conducive to this idea of what you do is usually anonymous, and even if it may not be anonymous, you may feel that it's anonymous, or that because it's electronic, you're somehow protected from getting in trouble or from being identified, and so you feel a little bit less guarded and a little bit more willing to do something that is potentially risky or can be much more hurtful than something that you'd be willing to do face to face.
And then there's, most of our phones now have
Cameras.
cameras.
Yeah.
I read an article about these girls who had this like blog that they made, and they would take pictures of girls in the locker rooms who they didn't like or who weren't popular, and so then they would go and snap photos and post them on the blog that they had. So, I mean, and these are photos of the locker room, so I mean, you can just imagine, I mean, and it's hard too, because like Taylor said, the parents don't understand how easy it is to get a blog and how that's becoming a big part of our society, and the kids are really catching on to it quicker than the adults in some cases, and using and abusing it.
Here's
so.
the thing that just started last week. I don't know if you're familiar with a site called the Pirate Bay. They are number one, well, probably the most important BitTorrent, movies, software, TV programs that are being downloaded in violation of copyright law, supposedly.
Right.
And they're very hardcore about, we're not going to stop, we're going to keep doing it.
Freedom of information,
You know?
yeah.
And so they've now started a blog service that cannot be edited in any way. They swear that you can put up there whatever you want. So if you wanted to put up a snuff video where someone was killed, and you know, it's anonymous. I said, well, we'll see if I can sign up. How much information they asked for?
Not much.
No, not much at all. So,
And that's what some of the schools were talking about, how they really can't do anything about a lot of these blogs that students are putting up, and a lot of these things that students are doing under like freedom of speech and things like that. They can't actually have them take a lot of these things down. So a lot of parents have been talking about specific legislation since it's dealing with minors, but as of right now, there's not much to do about it.
As I understand, there are with social networking sites, while it may be open to everybody, there's still an age limit. Is that
13.
that's right? 13.
Yeah, right now it's to like consent to do anything online, joining a lot of the sites. Obviously not like pornographic, just regular like getting an instant message account, things like that. It's 18, and a lot of parents are also pushing for legislation to up that age to maybe 16 or maybe even 18. And to do it, you'd have to get a parent permission if you were younger than that. So.
Okay.
okay, I also have on my list webcams, iChat, Skype. Now, Skype is a free video telephone service if you have internet contact and a camera. That's how I speak to people overseas and even to my colleagues here in America who are sitting at their desk. And lots of other people have webcams, or what do you know about this?
There's a lot of benefits to these services. As far as economically, it makes a lot of sense to use these services to connect with one another. It makes a lot of sense environmentally to connect with one another through these telecommuting situations. It's just unfortunate that they cannot be monitored more closely. And what would we do if we did monitor them more closely? What kind of censorship would be preventative measures, and what kinds of information would we be losing in that kind of administrative hassle?
I think that you can see these kind of services as, in some ways, just an extension of the prank call. You know, the telephone is something that's existed, and along with the telephone comes the prank call. You know, there's always the potential that you could be prank called by someone you know in school or something like that. And with Skype or with a visual phone service or something, you know, there's the potential that someone can harass you. But I think you also have a bit more control over whose calls you accept and who these individuals are that are trying to contact you. So while the potential does exist, I don't think that would be a primary concern when talking about bullying.
It's something I think that a lot of the users of these services are not aware of, that things can come back around later. You may put something on now that you don't mind, but then it may surface. On our there's a debate listserv for discussion, and there's a woman who was a debater a few years ago, and someone posted some bad humor about her, poorly done, etc. And now all of a sudden she's about to be promoted at her law firm, and the partners are passing around the text of this story, right, that this person tells. And so I think a lot of people need to realize they need to clean up their online act,
Certainly.
as well as, but back to bullying. Now, why is it different? Here are some reasons we came up with. And let's start with the one that I think Joe and Stephanie already mentioned, that there's something about the internet where you're just more blunt, more risk-taking, more extreme. What's the explanation for that, do you think?
I think it's just that there's a medium in between you and the person. I mean, that changes everything. If I just am going to talk to Taylor and call her a bunch of names, I have to think of the ramifications. Is she going to hit me? Is she, you know, like that kind of thought process doesn't exist when you're using the computer as a medium, because you have that in between to kind of as a buffer in a way. And so you say things.
Like an emoticon is a little bit different than watching someone break down in front of you. You know, seeing an exclamation point or a symbol of some kind that denotes emotion is very different from real emotion.
And it ties in with the anonymous factor too.
Definitely.
Because you can have that. You can kind of test the waters of your bullying and what you want to say to someone anonymously before you actually confront them on the internet or potentially in person.
I think for me a lot of it is that I can't read the nonverbals of the person I'm communicating with. And maybe on like a Skype or a webcam I could, but normally I can't. And so I can't, you know, if I'm arguing a bit hard about something, I can see their concern and I can sort of fall back.
Right.
But if I was a bully, and if that was my goal, I would press hard and really press hard and never know when to pull back. Right, because you just sort of get into the moment. What does it mean if several people start to persecute one person?
What is it?
I mean that's much more serious.
Yeah.
Well, I think that this goes beyond like classroom taunting or anything that's in school, because suddenly there's this exposure to a larger audience who might not even be a part of it, and it's this kind of social isolation there. It's not only you and the people you know, but it's everyone else. It's kind of like the entire world is laughing at you. And that's what the internet really brings. This is kind of ability to spread it beyond the group it was originally confined to. Because if it was a problem, you could then resolve it with the people who you were involved with. But now on the internet, it can be spread, to websites and seen by thousands of people, and therefore the problem and the emotional weight that goes along with it just gets that much bigger.
Sure, and you see the example with the girls that tried to post that YouTube video. I mean, that was their goal, right? It was like, I want to do this, and I want as many people to see it as possible. So I'm going to post it somewhere where I know it's going to get a lot of hits.
Well, and what happened is that they showed it on the news,
Yeah,
on cable news.
which is
they
even
showed
more
it over and
ridiculous.
over again, but blacked out people's faces. But you still saw the people being
violent
hit in the
imagery,
face and
yeah.
the violent stuff, and it was like the news media seemed glad to do that.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure it spawned a bunch of copycats
Sure.
who were out there.
A lot of people were like, hey, that's not a bad idea.
You know
Sure.
what, Sam? We should do that to Joe.
Yeah.
Right, and then
But you got my back, right?
Totally got your back.
That's right.
Yeah, there's actually whole websites dedicated to like assault videos I found in doing research for this. So I
Wow.
mean, it's yeah.
So,
Not an
Crazy.
isolated event.
Yeah, not an
Nice
isolated
one,
event at all.
What does it say to you that there are websites of assault videos that people videotape assaults that they did and then share them? I mean, it's probably not a BDSM thing, It's really not a bondage.
No.
I think
No, it's-
I think it's kind of endemic of the kind of newer generation who thinks that, I know this is a whole different issue whether violence is entertainment, but quite literally, the shock value of things to other people isn't what they are to people who are raised with reality television and the internet as an available resource. So that someone getting beat up might be something you want to watch because it's different and it's going to be more extreme than the last video last week where someone got beat up or something like that.
That's what people want, that drive for like reality. There's always been like the backyard wrestling videos that
Yeah.
people buy and things like that. And so
Yeah.
the internet just makes it easier to have that type of media proliferate to the audiences because there's an audience for everything. So
Well, I mean, now, how different is it, you think, that in Japan they have websites that have these deadly insects fight each other, and they had this series of elimination bouts between deadly insects to figure out what was the most deadly, and it was a big, mean spider with good, fangs and lots of poison, and okay, so
I think
Yes.
that's pretty different.
because it's not human.
Yeah, they're not human. I mean, again, you're encroaching on sort of dangerous territory when you're forcing animals to fight one another. But at the level of insect, at the risk of sounding, human-centric here, I think insects are insects and human beings are
Okay.
a different story.
All right, now somebody said that in some ways that this kind of channel for behavior can be useful in that it might keep some people in check. What's the argument there?
Well, I think the argument would work that, if someone is physically assaulting you or physically abusing you or even mentally abusing you in person at school, then you may not have the tools to fight back in person, but if you expose something about this bully on the internet to some of your friends or to some of their friends, that it might sort of teach them that bullying is maybe not the best thing to do because they would then be a victim of bullying themselves.
in a way, it becomes then equal opportunity bullying. And so you have kids who maybe would have never bullied each other given normal social
Yeah.
circumstances in person, that now that they have this available to them do become bullied or bulliers.
I think the major problem with that, though, is the fact that you were saying that people that wouldn't normally bully would then start to bully. So
Right.
you'd have net growth in the amount of bullying.
yeah.
And they might decide they like it.
Right, they might think it's fun and start
There's
doing it
also
more.
the fear that if there's all these assault videos, people are afraid to even start bullying because they don't want to step it up to that level where there's
Defend
actually
them on
like
TV.
life-risking or life-threatening activities being assaulted on them or their friends. Who knows what kind of abuse or humiliation they're going to suffer if they start something.
Okay, we already talked about one of the possible solutions, which was raise the minimum age
Right, the
for
age.
a lot of these services. Are you saying that we should do that for telephones too, maybe?
I don't know. I
That's a
mean,
tough one.
parents nowadays every kid has a cell phone, so they can find out what time baseball practice was moved to and things like that. But I think the biggest way to combat this problem is just talking to your kids, like telling them. Like the biggest filter for them is them thinking for themselves and knowing how to identify these acts. And so if parents learn about this problem and can talk to their kids and explain to them, look, this is what kids might do, and it's mean, the same way you'd talk to your son if he was getting, hit on the playground, and just tell them what's going on and, really try to teach them. And that's going to be the best way, I think, for a lot of students.
I really think there needs to be a lot more education of the parents.
Yeah.
Because it's quite simply a technology that's so new and growing so fast. Some parents literally don't know what it is or what the implications of it can be or why it affects their child so much. It doesn't mean they need to overreact, which is typically the common reaction, and say everything is bad, but I think parents need to be taught about this, and they need to teach their kids that the internet is real. It carries real implications that can be translated into real life, so you can't just take it for what it is.
And I think that works both ways. You need to be supportive of kids that might be bullied, but you probably need to be on the lookout to make sure your kids aren't bulliers.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right? That they're not engaged. I mean, if your kid's spending a huge amount of time on the internet, it might be good to know
What they're
What
doing.
what they're doing.
Yes, a potential solution that was proposed to me was that parents would have access to their children's email and to their children's Facebook or MySpace account to make sure, just as sort of a check to see what their kids are up to. Because, so often kids will be on the internet and their parents will really have no idea what it is they're doing or what they're looking at or how they're engaging with others on the internet. And so I think that comes with parental education. It's also parental awareness so that they know.
But along on that point, there's so much freedom as far as creating new screen names and also raising the age limit. As Steph and I were talking earlier, it's so easy to get around those age requirements. So it's definitely a process of getting to know your kids and having some communication on the subject rather than trying to pry into their life and gain all their information.
Well, there's a lot of issues here, and we could probably talk about them for another half hour or so, if not more. Then that's our way. But we're about out of time, and I just wanted to ask you a question, and I guess it's calling for a short answer, as our time is as well. And I want to ask you if you think 5 years from now, will this be as big a problem, bigger, less? Will we learn how to deal with it? And let's start with you, Joe.
I think it will probably be as big a problem, if not bigger, because for every solution, there's another, a counter solution. Kids will find out bigger and badder ways to bully one another.
Sam Rickard.
In 5 years, I think it won't be as bad. I think now that people are starting to realize the problems and it is starting to get this attention, I think it will give time for people to reacclimate to the internet being a part of everyday life. And as soon as that is accepted, then we can learn how to deal with it.
Okay. Taylor Lalemand.
I think it will only continue to get worse until we reorganize our social structures to have better community support of one another. Right now, we have global communication, and parents can't talk to their kids.
Stephanie Kimerer.
I'm going to be an optimist and say I think it will decrease because I think too many parents have learned the hard way. Right here in Essex, a couple years ago, a middle school boy killed himself because of actions like this. And so parents are learning the hard way, and I think talking about it and just getting the word out there is going to proliferate, and parents will learn about this issue, talk to their kids, and I think that's a key step in decreasing this, and I think it will.
I think it will go down because all of us, the young people, the old people, whether will learn how to deal with this new medium more. It's new. We don't know how to handle it. We need new politeness norms or whatever. So I'm hopeful that that'll make a difference. Thanks a lot for being with us for this week's edition of Flashpoint. Don't forget to take our advice.
Think for yourselves.